everyone and welcome to Star Wars Lore. Today we'll be discussing every clone, rank, type, and armor variant in Legends. This is a sister video to the one we've already done on Canon. So basically we're going to take everything that we've done in that Canon video and basically build on it. So we're not going to go through every single thing that is Canon and put it directly in this video, or else we'll just be doubling down and repeating things. So we're just going to take things that are not Canon and make it into this video. Also, it's important that at any time in the Star Wars universe that Disney and Lucasfilm could take something from Legends and make it into canon. So this will be Legends material as of the date this video is created. First up, we'll discuss the standard armor types really briefly because there really is no major significant change between canon and Legends. They're both pretty consistent on the Phase 1 and Phase 2 armor upgrades that happened during the Clone Wars. So we'll just kind of gloss this over pretty much, but just safe to say in Legends, all clones had Phase 1 armor that they started with in the Clone Wars, and then it got replaced to Phase 2 armor throughout the war. If you have any specific questions, please check out the canon material, but otherwise let's just get to the additional ranks and armor variants, which is the cool part of Legends. Here are the clone ranks in Legends. They'll be expanded from canon to include all the ranks that are mentioned in Legends material. These can also be canon at some point, they just haven't been brought in or detailed further in canon. So first off, you had the trooper who sported white armor. He was kind of the grunt of the Republic and was what you would typically see in Attack of the Clones. Next up, you had a corporal who also sported the white typical Phase 1 armor, and he was second in command of a squad. A sergeant wore green armor, and he was in charge of a squad, which was 9 men. A sergeant major also sported green armor flashes, and he was second in command of a platoon. Next was second lieutenant, who had blue armor flashes and was in charge of a platoon, which was 36 men. And right above his rank was lieutenant, who was first in command of a platoon, 36 men. Above a lieutenant was captain, who had red armor flashes. He was in charge of a company, which was 144 men. A major, who also had red armor, was considered a battalion leader. Above a major was a battalion commander, and he was the ultimate source of authority in a battalion, and he sported yellow armor flashes. A regimental commander was one step up, and he was in charge of a regiment. Next was a senior commander, who also sported yellow armor, and he was a legion commander. And at the very top was a marshal commander. He also had yellow armor, and was in charge of the entire corps. These are all the armor variants and clone types in Legends. A clone advisor was an individual who served as an advisor to a clone command squad. Their duty was to inform the squad about their missions, status, and objectives, and this was commonly seen in Republic Commando. An aerial recon trooper would monitor approaching forces from the air and relay the target positions to a team on the ground. They had light and dark green designs to mark their squad affiliation, and they wore jetpacks on the backs so they could maneuver easily. They also wore macro binoculars on their helmets and carried special communications equipment. An anti-air trooper was a trooper specifically designated for surface-to-air attacks from incoming vehicles, so they typically had like a RPG attached to them to shoot down vehicles. An anti-trooper was pretty unique. This was pretty much after the Clone Wars, where Kamino started breeding their own sets of clone troopers against the Empire. Basically, the Kamino scientists have kind of gone renegade, and they started to build this new army. At the core, they were jet troopers, and they were all destroyed as the 501st and Darth Vader attacked Kamino. Clone assassins were commissioned by Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. The assassins were trained specifically to kill Jedi. They would train with Padawans of the Jedi Order. The clones developed greatly enhanced speed, as well as an aptitude for anticipating strikes and to resist Jedi mind tricks. They were primarily deployed after Order 66 to the Jedi Temple, and the armor they had included 2 vibroblades attached to the elbows, which extended their reach and increased their striking distance of their attacks. Blaze Troopers were frontline close combat soldiers that were equipped with heavy jetpacks and dual wrist-mounted flamethrowers. Their armor was extremely thick due to their unique weaponry. Covert Ops Troopers were mainly assigned to perform dirty work that most clones would not do. They mainly were tasked to find and eliminate clone troopers who've gone AWOL from the army. Clone engineers, or clone combat engineers, were members of special engineer battalions in the army. They were well versed in a variety of engineering techniques. They could perform demolitions and repair vehicles. Felucian commandos were clone commandos specialized in operating on jungle planets, just like Felucia. During the Third Battle of Felucia, they were deployed on the planet to assist the Republic troops in defending Felucia. They wore a black version of class commando armor with yellow markings. Their main weapon was a DC-15A blaster rifle, colored the same way as their armor. Clone Grenadiers were clone troopers that basically used grenades. Another favorite weapon of the Grenadiers were grenade launchers. In a typical patrol, there would be 1 Grenadier to 3 regular clone troopers. Clone heavy gunners were armed with some of the most powerful explosives and weapons in the army, including missiles, grenades, demolition charges, and other heavy weaponry. Their main weapons were the largest ever designed to be used by clones. The clone heavy troopers were heavy weapon specialists. These carried Murson PLX-1 missile launchers, blaster pistols, thermal detonators, and anti-personnel mines. The heavy troopers handled the anti-vehicle and anti-armor duties of the Republic, and they are not to be confused with the clone heavy gunner. High Orbit Precision Entry Troopers, or Hope Troopers, were specialized clone commandos used in the Clone Wars. They'd be launched from orbit in one-man escape pods. The outer shells would split open at an appropriate altitude, kind of like a parachute, that allowed the troopers inside to make a controlled descent to their target. Jet Troopers were issued electromagnetic pulse launchers. They also were equipped with DC-17 command pistols. They also had better cooling capacity so they could continue firing for a long period of time without overheating. They carried thermal detonators and learned to incorporate their jetpacks in battlefield tactics. Clone Marines were elite clone troopers tasked with warding off separatist boarding parties on capital ships. So they would either ward off incoming boarding parties or they would be the boarding party to get on ships. And these should not be confused with Galactic Marines. Lancer Troopers were clone troopers who specialized in speeder bike combat. They rode Lancer bikes and wielded power lances. Lancer Troopers were also used to overwhelm the droid front lines. Their bikes sometimes had heat-seeking missiles equipped, and they were one of the few clone troopers to actually have a melee weapon. Clone Shadow Troopers were an elite set of troopers. Because the ARC Troopers were dwindling in the war, the Shadow Troopers were created. They were used as a recon unit who had crazy cool modified and expensive armor. Basically, this armor allowed them to project a different sensor signature and image. So basically they could look like anyone else, in a nutshell. They had special mag seals that changed their cosmetic plates so they could change their appearance. Because of this, they had the advantage to infiltrate facilities and gather intelligence really easily. Clone snipers were sharpshooters equipped with specialized DC-15 sniper rifles. This makes the list because it was designated as a specific class in Legends. Sure, there's clone snipers in Canon, but it's at a specific class in Legends. In Legends, there were a few additional classes of ARC Troopers. First was the Null class. The Null class ARC Troopers were the first clones of Jango Fett created by the Kaminoan cloners, and they were the prototypes for the Grand Army of the Republic. They were ultimately deemed a failure and were not put into mass production. They were all saved from termination, though, by a Mandalorian mercenary who had later adopted them all. The Alpha class ARC Troopers were a group of 100 commandos created from Jango Fett's DNA. They were programmed to be more independent and were loyal to the Jedi. Some even resisted Order 66. The Rail class ARC Troopers were trained to have absolute loyalty to their Kaminoan creators instead of Emperor Palpatine. This was after the Clone Wars, and they were created to complement the anti-Imperial clone troopers that the Kaminoans had established. Here's the bonus round. Here's just a couple crazy cosmetic purchases that you could buy in one of the Star Wars games as clones. So this is just for kicks. Next is the Nutcracker clone. This is actually an Easter egg. I won't get into it, but as you can tell, you can see why this is not canon. Next up is the Skeletal clone. This one definitely should be canon. I mean, I don't know why it's not. Let's resurrect all the dead clones, turn them into zombies, let's go. I hope you enjoyed this video as we looked at all the Legends clone ranks, types, and armor variants. If you haven't watched my canon video, be sure to check that out so you can compare the two and see if I missed any clones. As always, thanks for watching Star Wars Lore. Be sure to subscribe, and you can follow me on Twitter at Star Wars Lore. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next video.